What's going on, everyone, and welcome to episode number 11 of the Overcaffeinated and Overqualified podcast with myself, Ryan, and David, or ChefDeMarco.
Hello, hello.
How are we doing this evening, David?
Oh, wonderful, man. Wonderful. I think we both worked today, so we're finally off and doing our own thing.
Yeah, I feel that. I didn't have to work today, but I worked the last 2 days, so I still feel it coming into a day off.
Nice.
You still can get that same feeling whenever you're rolling in any time, any period or stretch of time off.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I can totally agree with that.
definitely a thing.
I like my weeks to be like 5 days and then have 2 days off in a row, and I like it consistent. But I bet in your case, it's probably really nice to do that, where you only work 2 and then off 2, but it probably just switches from week to week, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like it more in a way more than 5 on 2 off, just because obviously if it's consistent, it's nice that way. But when it's not consistent, like if you pick up an extra day or like switch with someone, it kind of ruins like the flow. I kind of like what you said, just like being consistent with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's nice, but I don't know. It's definitely nice just having more full days off than having a couple hours in the afternoon or evening or whatever. Like most 5-day work week jobs do
Right.
or have.
Mm-hmm. And in my case, my typical day is 9 to 5, and it's weird because it's not an office, it's not any sort of desk work, it's more or less just do stuff. 9 is a good in time, 5 is a good out time, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's always good hours. It's always nice when you can go to work and you don't have to wake up super early, because then you don't tank your sleep schedule when you're not working, because you're already getting up at like a decently, like you're able to get up at decently later time regardless.
Right.
So that's like the one thing I don't like about like 2 on 2 off, or even if you have to work 5 days and you have 2 days off and you have to work like really early in the morning and get up and be at work at like 7 or even like 8, because then you're getting up at like 5 or 6, and then even on your days off you're not able to stay up past like 10 or 11 o'clock, because otherwise you're gonna end up getting up late, and then you just tank your whole sleep schedule, and it's pretty much game over from there.
Your mental clock, even if you do that on a consistent basis, you're going to be going to bed at a certain time every day. And yeah, I think it would inhibit you when you try to do stuff on your off days, when you try to staying up late or going out or doing something like that.
For sure.
I see it.
I can never still, like, to this point, even if I tank my sleep schedule like I did last weekend, because of the staying up late on Saturday for the party, I'm just so ready to go to bed at like 10, 10:30, 11 at the latest. It's just like it's time to go to bed. So once you get past that time, all of a sudden I always feel like so much more tired or exhausted and stuff. Like it starts to weigh on more after that like maximum like lateness or whatever that you're used to staying up till, and then you usually find yourself waking up decently early, regardless of then like what time you go to bed or whatever. And then I just hate I hate waking up late after staying up later, because then like that day you want to get back to going to bed kind of early, so you lose however many hours in the day, and it's just like, well, I just wasted however many hours extra sleeping for like no reason or whatever.
I totally agree. Talk a little bit about Saturday. How was that? I heard a little bit about it from other people, but
Saturday, yeah, it was a good time. We actually got my brother to drink. He did at least two rounds of shots. I'm pretty sure he did more than that, but I know I did 2 rounds with him. We did the 1 drink equals 1 sub thing, and I think that helped, because I think we got him to play 1 drinking game with us. So at a point he was equating like 1 time he would drink in the game for a drink. Really, that didn't doesn't really equal out.
Right.
That was only like I think three times maybe, but that's only like less than a quarter cup of beer or whatever.
Who was subbing?
I think Corey and I are probably just gonna like split it.
Oh, okay.
Split like the gifts or whatever. It's probably will be like what, $5 a sub, right? So
yeah,
maybe like I don't know. Maybe we'll do like $20 each or something. Maybe like 15. I gotta talk to Corey about it and see what he wants to do. But we're definitely gonna do it. I mean, he did drink, and he definitely felt like he was let loose kind of towards the end of it. So
Right.
like that was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that honestly that him actually like doing it and experiencing it and actually and enjoying himself, it kind of breaks his idea of like not wanting to do it to have fun, you know? Because I
Right.
mean, like I don't drink a lot either. You know, drinking is not my thing. I
Mm-hmm.
do it socially and stuff, and so, like whenever I go to a party or something or I have a party, that's like the only time I really drink. I never really drink, even when everyone drinks when they play games or whatever. One night a week or whatever. You know, I stick to like whatever coffee and water. I just drinking just isn't my thing,
Right.
and that's what got me going into to Sunday. Just regardless of how little or even like how much I drink, but when when you get past that like the level of when you're actually feeling good or whatever, kind of at this point, regardless of whatever I do, even the night of, the next day I just feel a lot more draggy. You know, not like
Yeah.
hung over
Yeah.
because like I don't have like a massive headache or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but just like less draggy or whatever, like more draggy. Don't really want to do anything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So like the day after is like I usually lately has been like equated to like a wasted day almost.
I
So
totally agree with that. Yeah.
yeah, so like whenever I go to I drinking or doing parties or stuff like that, it's always like a 2 day thing, you know. So it's like, do I really want to put 2 days into whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's so weird because like as much fun as you have when you drink and you're in that environment and stuff, it just always feels like afterwards it's not worth the after just for like the however many hours of like fun you can have sometimes.
I
Or maybe
agree.
that's just when you actually have stuff that you got going on and you want to do the day after. That
Right.
I think might be part of it, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was still a lot of fun. He did that. Uh, Corey was like, did you hear about Corey? He tanked like really early.
Oh, was he puking and stuff?
Yeah,
That's
him and
funny.
Alex like tanked. It had to have been like around midnight, if not even like before. They were just like both like kind of like done. But
That's funny.
Corey said it was like he I guess he's somehow lined up multiple shots that like back to back to back or something, and he said that's what got him because we had like there were like Jello shots and pudding shots too on top of the regular shots we did,
Right.
so it was kind of like a lot of shots.
The
It was
jello
really
shots
funny at
sneak
the
on you.
yeah, like towards the end, my mom was trying to like get rid of all the Jello and pudding shots, so we were like passing around like the bags of like the shots, just like sitting there, like just, like casually like eating, just like
Jello.
cups of shots.
Yeah, but they're not. They're secrets.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
but
funny.
yeah, it was definitely a good time. Fun Halloween party. My parents played a couple games with us as well, so that was obviously a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Everyone
just
was of age and good
yeah,
times. Good times.
definitely definitely a good time.
Awesome.
So I actually really want to hear because I haven't talked to you since before Saturday.
Hmm.
How did the Joe Rogan show go?
So Saturday, Joe Rogan show. You went to your brother's birthday, his 21st. I worked, but then I went to the Joe Rogan show after in the Wolfstein Center. And it started at 8, which I was unfamiliar with that. I thought it started at 7. So we had like, I got off at like 3:30 and we had to kill like little over like 4 hours because we wanted to go get something to eat. So I got like super drunk after work, and like this was like 4 to 5 hours before I took a bunch of shots of Jameson, thinking I was gonna like be able to hold that until I went to the show. Didn't happen. Like obviously that's a long time in between. So I was just kind of like I wasn't driving. I got a ride to my mom's house where my brother's at, and he drove us to Chick-fil-A, which I haven't had in a while, and like I was feeling it because Chick-fil-A, probably one of the busiest fast food restaurants on a Saturday night. It is insane how Chick-fil-A even keeps up with that. Regardless, I had Chick-fil-A. We went to Cleveland after. We got there pretty much like right around 7:30, and then there was a huge line parked in the alley. Well, like a parking lot alley, not like a sketchy alley. Got in line. We stood in line for probably like 20 minutes because we went to a weird one. We didn't go to the main. We were on the side, so we went to like one of the C entrances.
Hmm.
But we waited in line. We were talking to a bunch of people because we didn't know who was opening for him. There was like speculation. Usually he tours with Nikki Glazer, which is like one of the well-known female comedians nowadays. She has a comedy special on Netflix. regardless, I was asking the guys behind us. He was like, I wish Joey Diaz, if you're familiar with like the LA comedy scene and when they all lived in Colorado. Joey Diaz is like a Puerto Rican kind of large male. He's been in The Longest Yard. He's been in other movies as well. So he's hilarious. So we thought maybe it was going to be him. And then we found out on Instagram that it was Andrew Santino. Like he's got the Whiskey Ginger podcast. I haven't really listened to that. Really funny guy. So he opened for Joe. We get our seats, right? We sit down. We were like, I wonder when it's going to start. You know, it's like 8:15 at this point. The lights go out. Like the lights, you know, dim or whatever. And they're only using like half of the arena. I thought that was weird. Like they only used like half of it. Maybe because they didn't sell enough tickets. I don't know exactly.
Oh, well, I mean, for shows like that, even when you go to like concerts and places like that, they don't usually put people behind like the stage, because like sometimes they'll just set the stage up in like at the end instead of like in the middle, so then they can whoever's performing or whatever, they can just project outwards and they don't have to worry about like a full circle or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I've been to the Wolfstein Center and they used like they used probably 3/4 of the venue. And then the back fourth is all backstage and where the stage is set up. Mm-hmm. But it literally was only half of the arena. It was very strange. But, like, it was full. And our seats were amazing, and I appreciate it for you giving me those. We were directly in Eye's view, like a level up from the stage. And, nice. I mean, I have weird eye problems. I couldn't really see, but they had screens, you know? So I was like, I would be the guy looking at the screen because, like, I can't see. It's not like it's far away. It's just everything's kind of fuzzy when it's lit up, and you know, it's dark and light. And so I just watched the screen the whole time, and I laughed so hard that my throat hurt. Like it hurt to like do anything afterwards. And Andrew Santino's like half an hour was by far one of the funniest things I've seen live or like even on tape or like afterwards. Like he was the funniest dude. So Joe Rogan, when he went on, I did not know how short he was. But, you know, obviously he's very talented and it was very funny. He told a lot of stories, which was cool. A lot of the stuff that you wouldn't know if you didn't listen to his podcast, he made reference to. My brother was kind of out because he didn't really listen to the podcast ever. So some of the stuff that he would have brought up, you didn't really know the comparison or reference. So I thought that was kind of weird. I couldn't stop laughing, and it was funny because like the guys next to us were just pissed drunk, and we didn't drink anything because we sat down and we're like, okay, we can't leave because we're right in the middle of, you know, there's 8 seats, me, my brother, 8 more seats, so we didn't want to like get up. Mm-hmm. But the people around us were so funny because they were laughing so hard, and like it makes you laugh more. You know what I mean? So anyway, so the comedy show was probably like an hour and a half, 2 hours, very quick. It was raining all day, so we go out. This is the funny part. There's this hill we have to go down to get to the other street, and there's another hill to go up. I just wipe out going down the hill. Like, just wipe out. I'm wearing, like, Nikes, and, you know, people are around me because everyone's leaving, and I just, like, lay there for a minute, like... Everyone just starts laughing, and I'm not embarrassed because, like, everyone was trying not to do that, and I was the dude that fell. So it was like everyone understood what was going on. Yeah. And then I got up, and then we just went to the car, and my ass was soaked. But it was quite fun, and it was a good day. And I got out of work at 3 and then had 2.5 days off, technically, after that. So I, you know, weekend was good. We didn't really do much. Halloween stuff, you know. Made some cookies, decorated them. Stuff like that, you know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man. It was awesome.
It's nice. Way to slip and almost kill yourself after leaving the show.
I know.
And not even being drunk.
No, I wasn't drunk by that point at all. I was sobered up.
That's the priceless part about it.
I could have drove home, honestly. I drank 4 hours ago. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it was a good time.
How long was did Joe's set or?
A little over an hour.
Nice. Really? Nice.
A little over an hour. I didn't go on my phone at all because I wanted to just make sure I was like present in the moment because I've never been to a comedy show and I didn't want to miss anything. But I think the reason why he cut it short, because usually they do 90 minutes from what I'm aware of, depending because it was only him and an opener. Andrew did like half an hour, so you usually do like an hour and a half, 90
Mm-hmm.
minutes. I think at the end, like people didn't really get the stories he was talking about, and you can kind of feel it in the
Yeah.
air that it was kind of like no one was laughing, but like some people
Uh-huh.
were laughing. I couldn't stop laughing, but I feel like the people that went didn't know everything about Joe Rogan's podcast because I mean he references a lot. I mean that's just
Mm-hmm.
how it is. If you
Yeah.
podcast so much, you would think people would know more reference wise.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was still hilarious. But I think as a
Uh-huh.
comedian, you end up feeling it out. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
for sure.
Yeah.
I actually just today was listening to a video. It was one of a video compilation thing with him about
Mm-hmm.
him, and he was talking. They were talking about like the whole comedian thing in terms of like career, whatever, like how to being a better comedian, and just like you said, like they talked about multiple times, like the best comedians are ones that can realize when they're doing their bits,
Mm-hmm.
when when it's like time to kind of like wrap it up, or when things are sticking and when they're not sticking, to like
Right.
know when to switch the direction or whatever of what you know, what they're talking about and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely like that's definitely what makes like him such like a good performer and comedian is he's able to like do that and recognize those kind of things.
Exactly.
I, it's cool that you said that like a lot of the things that he uses for like his bits are stuff from his podcast. I mean I think he puts a podcast up like every day or every other day almost.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like
Right.
that's in a way that's where he gets a lot of his it makes sense for him to be able to get a lot of his material from those because of how many he does and the different kinds of people he talks with and stuff like that. Like
Right.
that's like that's like the interaction you see. And then if you know that like a decent amount of the people that are attending your shows or whatever most likely watch that because I know that's how I know of him. I didn't even know he was a comedian
Yeah.
until yeah, I had no clue he was a comedian because unless you watch the podcast where they talk about that or whatever, or until you watch it and then you start following him, then
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh wow, this guy's actually a comedian. He actually, I was what I always thought it was. I thought it was crazy when I found out that he was because when I saw how many podcasts he puts out and stuff, it's like, how does this guy have time to go around the country and do stand up? Like, how do you get time?
Exactly.
Like like that's insane to me. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? It doesn't seem like he's gone that much to be
Yeah.
doing all that. So it's really crazy and cool that he does that, I think.
He's well. I listened to the one that he put out with Kevin Smith. You know Jay and Silent Bob.
Hmm.
Are you familiar with him?
Not really, but I think I know what episode
Silent
you're
Bob
talking about.
is Kevin Smith. Okay, so regardless, he put one out today, and I was watching it, listening to it. Matter of fact, and he talked about how many he was doing just that week alone, 6.
Wow.
And he's doing one on Friday that he's rolling over to the next week, because you don't want
Uh-huh.
to put that many out at one week because I couldn't listen to that many in one week. I mean, I listened to probably one every day, and then that's it. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But that's crazy. And the fact that he even said that today. He doesn't promote his shows. Like he doesn't promote. He might say where they're at, but he doesn't really say specific dates or times. He does all that through social media. So like
Uh-huh.
he doesn't even have to. You know what I mean? But everyone
Yeah.
knows that the podcast is the podcast, the comedy is the comedy, but they
Hmm.
roll together really well. And you said it's interesting that he uses his podcast. I kind of meant it in a way that he's referencing, like the people that watch his podcast, that go to the shows, they find that funny. But people that don't watch his podcast, I feel like couldn't understand it. But he doesn't really take bits from his podcast. You know what I mean? He just references the funny stuff. Like it's you almost had to be there to
Like
understand
what?
what I'm saying.
Throw me an example here.
He talked about when that one biologist came on with the Neanderthals and how long ago that was. It was like 2 million years ago. That I wish I could say that word. It's like Australopithecus, like the species of chimp that was soon to believe to be human, and over 2 million years, their brain size developed by twofold. And it's
Hmm.
like if you didn't understand that, then you wouldn't get it, because I mean it's just because he said he was like more Neanderthal than the average person, and I mean like that was funny, but like if you didn't get the part before, about Australopithecus or whatever, the guy that came on that was a biologist. It's like, you know what I mean. But regardless, the show was awesome, and I wasn't gonna buy any food or drink unless it was like cheap, but everything was obviously, you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the Wolfstein Center and how they run. You want a 6-ounce beer for $19? I mean, I rather not. You know what I mean?
Probably what it's in terms of most things that you go to that are like entertainment based. It's pretty much
It's a monopoly. You can't bring anything in, and
up priced.
yeah. So I got drunk after anyway, so it's irrelevant. But it was a good time, and
Nice.
it wasn't 21 plus. They didn't ID. Obviously, if you got beer, you got ID'd. But like you could take anyone. You could take like a probably 18 or plus, which I thought was weird because I think usual comedy spots are 21 plus. You know what
really?
I mean?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So next time I go to one, I'm definitely gonna try to bring my girlfriend because I feel like she might get a laugh, and that's good.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't know that about stand up. Then again, I've never really been to anything before. That was gonna be my first one.
And then I gotta bring this up. No shade to Hilarities in Cleveland, but I guess they went there after and they got some food because I guess their food scene in Hilarities is really good. Like whoever the chef is, which I found this funny. Is the food's really good for the comedy shop or whatever. Usually you don't see good food at like a comedy store or food at all. And Andrew Santino and him did a podcast like a couple days after it was put out like Sunday. So I watched the whole thing because I wanted to hear what they said about Cleveland, And I guess Andrew Santino got food poisoning from Hilarities and was on the plane just vomiting profusely, which, which, which is funny because like that's Cleveland now. Like that's what people think, and that, his podcast, millions of hits, listens, like that. I've never been to Hilarities, but that's not gonna be good for their image. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Nice,
but if
nice
you get
hot takeaway from Cleveland, getting food poisoning. Yep, not going there again. You want to tour with me? Tour with me to Cleveland? Oh no, that wasn't too hot of an experience last time. I think I'll pass on this one.
But it's funny because I listen to like more comedy podcasts than I do like self-help or just inspiration podcasts. Bert Kreischer's doing his special in Cleveland at the Agora. I mean, I guess Columbus and Cleveland are huge for comedians to go to.
Oh really?
I don't know why. I guess it is. Obviously, L.A. and like all the other ones are much bigger. But like, if you're going on the East Coast, New York, Ohio, Boston, stuff like that is really big in comedy, which is cool.
Oh yeah, I mean that's really interesting to hear that. That's something Ohio's got going for it. I guess
Yeah.
we don't not too much, but at least the comedic scene is there.
Right.
That's a thing.
So I thought about going up to just like a normal comedy and doing like an open mic night and try to going up there and like seeing how I would do. Obviously prepare some material, not just go up fucking cold feet. Have like 5 minutes prepared and just like try to do it and see what happens. I think that could be a fun time with the boys. In my opinion.
Yeah, I mean if that's something that that would like interest you, I don't see why not.
I think it would just be fun just to
Yeah.
kind of experience it. It wouldn't be for any sort of profession or anything like that.
Yeah, just something fun to do.
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
think.
sure, man. Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt.
So basically the topic or discussion point of this podcast, regardless of our what we've talked about previously, was how podcasts started. And it's interesting because if you just like Google it, it's gonna lead you astray, and it's not gonna really give you like a definite answer, So I basically just looked up the definition of podcasting. Previously known as audio blogging, has its roots back in the 1980s with the advent of broadband internet service and portable digital audio playback devices such as the iPod. I can remember briefly on my old iPod there was a podcast app, on the weird, like the use your finger to scroll up and down kind of deal. But you never used it. I never used it. You know what I mean? but it didn't catch hold till 2004. Today, there are more than 115,000 English language podcasts available on the internet. How do you feel about that?
It's a big number.
Yeah,
I
and
can
we're
believe it though. I mean, like we've mentioned this before when talking about like just podcasts in general. Like just to think of how far they've come in terms of when I think of like individual people, whether or not like I've known them. A lot of the times, the people that I follow when it comes to podcasts, first I find them on YouTube, and then you find out that they have a podcast or whatever. And then a handful of them, their podcasts are like bigger than their YouTube or like social media presence,
Mhm.
and it's something that you wouldn't even like think about until you like kind of like start to follow them and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like people that literally make their name from the podcasts that they do,
100%.
and then are able to like spread that to other places.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's a crazy number, but I can definitely believe it in today with just the amount of things that can be like included in podcasts where it comes to just like skits or like stuff like that, like not even direct like conversation, but
Mm-hmm.
like you could record anything and turn it into a podcast.
Oh yeah.
Like you can tell stories through it,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, stuff like that. So there's just so much that you could consider a podcast that it's just it all comes down to kind of like what you want to listen to in a sense.
Exactly. And there's a way in Apple Podcasts, at least that I consume, that you can literally search for anything,
Hmm.
and you'll find a podcast that's around it. You know what I mean? And I heard today there's this statistic. There's people that literally source podcast ideas. Like they'll bring it to like a iHeartRadio or some sort of
Hmm.
big company,
Yeah.
and all it is the idea. Like, okay, let's make a sports podcast, but let's do it all in a different language, like
Uh-huh.
English speaking people that speak like French, and they'll do like U.S. sports. I mean, that was just like a vague idea,
Yeah.
regardless. But
Yeah.
people they get paid $100,000 usually to just bring an idea up. You don't even have to create the podcast yourself. Literally, just the idea.
Hmm. Well, like, I
You know.
think I guess something that kind of was interesting when you mentioned how many like podcasts that Joe puts out a week and stuff when it comes to like the content side of it. You can think of a lot of podcasts for in terms of what people do. What I think is like a show. It's like a show you watch on
Mm-hmm.
TV, and every one you put out is obviously a new episode. So you could put out, when you think of shows, certain shows, like if you go like a news show, every day there's a new news show. There's always something new that you can script out or
Right.
talk about that's brand new. And then even if you have you have like a written story or something, even a new one every week is more than easy enough to like to do. If you have a good
Yep.
idea. So
Mm-hmm.
when you think of like the amount of things that are out there and stuff, it's crazy to think about.
Of course, totally, yeah. And it's interesting too because when I wanted to start doing YouTube videos, and maybe you can comment on this, like I would watch like not a tutorial but just like a mindset video on how to prepare to do a YouTube channel. If you think about it, you do one a week,
Mm-hmm.
52 weeks in a year, 52 videos, and that's a good start. Obviously, if you do more than that a week, then you double your chances if you do two a week.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it like that, same way with podcasts, you do one a week, 52 weeks in a year, and sometimes we do more than a week, but we,
Yeah.
we have it backlogged because that's smart to do
Mm-hmm.
in our case because we don't know half the time what's going to happen next week. Um, but I think regardless of the situation, one week is perfect, and then you get
Yeah.
to the point, next year rolls around, we do the same thing, and then I mean, a couple years you have hundreds of podcasts.
Yeah.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
it's like making whenever you commit to doing YouTube videos. Like I found that just when you are able to like put out a lot of things, either because you're recording a lot of stuff, depending on
Mm-hmm.
like what kind of content you produce.
Mm-hmm.
If you're able to record a lot, you can then proceed to roll a lot out. That's why I think it'll be really nice when we go forward with the studio and are able to get like guests on and stuff, because then that's in addition to to normal stuff. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's adding, and it's a new type of content. It's a new style in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
but it's still around the same thing, and it's even better, I think. The thing I love all the podcasts where people do the interviews and stuff like that in person. It's so because I when I think of podcasts, I listen to the ones that are like interviews or educational and stuff. So it's like they're having one-on-one conversation like right there with
Totally.
the people, and it's so much easier to have conversation and draw a dialogue in anything you do when you're right there with the person.
Totally agree,
And
man.
you're actually looking right across from them and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's no layer. It's right there.
And I like it. I like interviewing other people. Like when we had Corey on the last time, and I think that
Hmm.
one's not out yet, but you guys will hear that eventually. Just having a different angle, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he obviously knows way more about digital security or
Hmm.
internet. What I don't know exactly how to say it, cybersecurity
Yeah,
than
cybersecurity.
we do, and we were like, I was like really interested on
Hmm.
what he knew just as a college level information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my boss totally says he would want to do it, and he knows a lot about community politics, the politics are surrounding, which I
Uh-huh.
know that we're trying to steer away from. But regardless, he would have a lot of insight, and I think we could get like 10 to 20 questions and ask him, and then
Hmm.
same with anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's like
I
the
think that'd be
biggest
great.
draw, in my opinion, to having like doing interviews and guests is I love to learn things from people,
Right.
and that's the best thing you can get from people who know something about a specific topic or have a background or something, or even are just really passionate about something. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much you can learn from them. I can talk all day about personal development and you know what I've learned so far in terms of finance, and I could talk all day about that and answer questions and try to help set things up for people. Obviously, I don't know an insane amount, but I know enough, to
Right.
where I can do that. So,
Mm-hmm. And I think once you start getting out there with things, you can ask. I mean, anyone that's like local. I don't think we're gonna try to like fly anyone out. But you could contact a local business that has specialties in something and bring them on. And as long as they think that their time's worth it and then they're gonna get heard, I think we can do anything.
yeah.
Locally anyway. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And with the studio, I feel like it brings more people in because it's like, oh, you guys have like a studio?
Yeah.
Like really? Like
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
we're not doing this over. Obviously, we're doing it over Discord right now, but we always shoot for the future and have a dream, so
Hmm.
it's
Oh
pretty
yeah, for
awesome.
sure.
There's another statistic here. In 2017, they did a survey. 42 million Americans over the age of 12 listen to podcasts on a weekly basis. 42 million. Obviously, 12 is kind of low. I don't think I would ever. I mean, I might, especially in this generation, be younger and listening to
Hmm.
podcasts.
Yeah.
I think I could do that.
Well, I still think they have a lot of content when it comes to shows that are centered around for like younger people.
Like PG
Yeah.
teen friendly.
Yeah, like early, like early high school or middle school level, because with
Right.
today's technology, everyone at that age or even probably earlier than that is exposed to like phones and devices where you can pull up podcast type things. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
And I know we've mentioned this before, but like podcasts are so great now, especially because you equate to how valuable time is, and when you can listen to a podcast while you're working out every day, while you're driving from place to place during commutes and stuff like that, or even just when you're working on something that like you can be hyper focused on. I
Hmm.
like to think, to where like you're not really like sitting there like trying to read things, but you know what you're doing and you're just doing stuff, and you can
Yep.
still listen to something, and you need something as a backdrop. It definitely functions really great in that aspect, you know.
Hmm.
So there's just so many ways that you can consume the content that it's so valuable to do it, because you can only listen to music and things like so much. You know what I mean? Even
I
if it's
agree.
new music.
Yeah.
Like I usually listen to music on my way home from work on the day before I have like a weekend. That's the only day I can really like do it or I really
Right.
want to. Other than
Hmm.
that, it's like Audible or sometimes a podcast or something
Yeah.
to just because I want to use that time almost in like a as wisely as possible and try to consume
Exactly.
something that's like going to add value or something. Or if
Exactly.
it's something that you're just interested in. I just started getting back into listening to the Game of Thrones books again, and because I'm just I love those books.
Did you
They're
see
great.
that they're doing a prequel series called House of Dragons?
Yeah, so I haven't looked into it in depth, but so they were originally going to do a prequel about the Long Night, and then I guess they scrapped that like yesterday or today, and they replaced it with that.
Mm, okay.
I'm not 100% sure if that's what happened or what's going on, but I heard they're still doing one, but I also heard they scrapped one. I just at this point I'd love to have more of shows with all the lore that's there, but
Right.
if George R. R. Martin could just finish the two books and get those out, I'd be happy. I don't need
Interesting.
any.
I did not catch the Game of Thrones bug, man. I barely watch TV as it is.
Hmm.
Like me and my girlfriend watch Netflix, but we'll watch a series together, and it will take months. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy because we don't watch. I don't watch TV. She'll watch
Hmm.
her stuff. We just started watching Gotham. I know that's an old show, and people are probably like cringing because like it's so old. Like why haven't you watched it? You know what
I
I
don't know
mean?
if it's that old. I mean, they still put. I think what isn't the last season
I don't. I
around the
just
corner?
started.
I think the
Uh,
last season's like on its way.
it's really good though.
Hmm.
And I like DC Universe over Marvel like any day of the week.
Hot
And
take.
I will take DC over Marvel. That's just me though. Like the Avengers movies were good,
Hmm.
huge budget, CGI for fucking days, but DC Comics, DC Universe, you know what I mean? That's just me.
Hmm.
And the way that they tie it in is like super nostalgic in a way. Like it's obviously
Uh-huh.
when Bruce Wayne's very young, and then there's like
Yeah.
Ivy that's like, and there's Catwoman that's literally like a teenager. So like obviously, hopefully, will progress in the show when they get older. I mean, I don't even know what to expect at this point, but
Yeah.
it's really interesting. And we started watching that, but regardless, it's just TV. And what we were talking about before was consuming like stuff. I've started listening to podcasts every single day at work.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, when someone talks to me, I pull out my AirPod and I'll like look them in the eye and talk to them about whatever we're discussing. I'm not gonna like have a podcast going in my ear while I'm
Hmm.
talking to someone. I
Yeah.
find that very disrespectful. Or I'll like turn it off while I have a conversation. But when I have a lot of alone time, which is sometimes all the time, when I'm like prepping and making bread, doing from scratch desserts, anything
Hmm.
really, it just kind of like helps the time go by.
Yeah.
And I'll work 8 hours and not even think about it, and I'll listen to like
Mhm.
two podcasts in that time, and it's a great day.
Yeah. It's definitely like you said. It's whenever you have the time to like consume the stuff like that, it's like it's a no brainer. And
Right.
there's just so much stuff out there
Mm-hmm.
in when it comes to like entertainment content that there's you almost feel like in a way sometimes that there's just not enough time to consume everything that you want to consume. So that's where it is where you pick out like the ones that are interesting to you because of the people that they're talking about or
Mm-hmm.
the show and what it's about and stuff like that. Like I stayed out of the whole Game of Thrones thing forever. Like right up
Right.
until I think season 8 had started and it was like, all right, I think I'm finally gonna get on this train and see what it's all about. So it was like super fast watch through, like a binge watch of everything right away. And
Right.
literally right after I finished watching it once, I started watching it again,
Mm-hmm.
but not in like binge mode, obviously. So
Right.
like you're able to like kind of like you're able to pick it up more and actually everything sinks in. That's why like I think whenever you whether it's like whenever you watch like certain things multiple times because you know how it is like when you watch like maybe like a YouTube compilation of something, the more you might watch something, the more you obviously can get out of it and pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of like TV shows or stuff, or like if you read books or something multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
normally at least for me, it's like I know that I enjoyed something enough if I find myself coming back to it.
Right.
You can think of that like with movies and stuff too. So if you want to like rewatch a show that's like however many hours long or whatever, or like reread a book that's however long, like you got something out of that and you liked what it was talking about.
Oh, totally.
So
Yeah.
definitely on the second run through of Game of Thrones, it was like, man, I really like this story and this content. So I want to delve more into it, which is exactly what I did.
You got the
Now
books.
I'm on the third book,
Mm-hmm.
and the show was almost like it's just a backdrop almost to like what's really there.
Yeah.
So that's why like I said, it's like you give me the last two books, we're good.
Right.
I
You
don't
don't
need
need
any
anything
hit
else.
hit shows or anything. Just get the books done so we can get the full story and we'll be good to go.
That's so funny. Yeah, I don't own a lot of movies. I own probably like 4 or 5, and they're by far the like my most watched movies. And I mean, it's just how it is. You know what I mean? I don't own a lot of movies though. But TV for me, I just try not to watch it as much. But sometimes during bed hours, I'm gonna turn something on. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And YouTube to some people kind of seems kind of taboo because it's like, what are you watching on YouTube? It could be like anything.
Hmm.
And I kind of try to consume informational stuff, but sometimes I'll go down a rabbit hole of like kids getting hurt compilations on YouTube,
Yeah.
which is bad. But if it makes you laugh, more power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Watch whatever you want to watch. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
For sure.
That's so funny. So I wanted to mention the curators of the podcasts. They didn't call it that at the moment, but in 2004, Adam Curry and Dave Winner are accredited with the invention of podcasting, and it's up for dispute on who actually did it. I've heard Joe Rogan talk about it countless times on who it was. Some say Tom Green before MTV was a huge hit. Tom Green was that actor, and he had people come over and just basically he live streamed them talking,
Hmm.
and you could dispute that into a podcast whether if it was informational or
Yeah.
not. Regardless, I don't know. I think it's really cool that it was kind of like a weird thing that people did, and all of a sudden,
Hmm.
look at it now. You know what I mean? I know. I mean, at least the podcast I listen to, they have a lot of ad reads at the beginning and the end. That's advertisers trying to push their products on the listeners, and
Hmm.
they're paying that person to read it. And sometimes some of those things, especially for sponsorships, thousands of dollars, hundreds of
Yeah.
thousands of dollars each time they read that. It is massive. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I think it like word influencer is huge nowadays with social media. I
Yeah.
think, I think, like podcasting was before all that. Like you didn't have an Instagram model doing influencing for a clothing brand.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Podcasts
I see what you
had
mean.
podcasts had ad reads way before we even knew what they were. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Before like the influencing thing, you could say came to a head or whatever. What's it that
Right.
like you mentioned is it's you're able to support the show or whatever, and it's a way when you have what's it like 42 million listeners or whatever.
Yep.
It's another just way to get your products and stuff out there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's beneficial when you actually listen to podcasts and they do products and ads that are relatable to what their shows are about. So then
Exactly.
it's like, oh, this actually could be good. I'm gonna check this out.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think that I heard about Audible through a podcast. Like I didn't really,
100%.
I wasn't aware of what it was
Mm-hmm.
until the ad read on a podcast. And I know
Right.
there's a couple other things out there like what
Squarespace. I wanted to
yeah,
try to.
Squarespace, Skillshare.
Yep. I wanted to
Uh,
switch my website provider that I do my website from Wix to
mm,
Squarespace, but I
mm,
didn't know how the domain name would switch over. I didn't want to risk it and lose the domain name because I pay for that, and I didn't know how it was going to work. But Squarespace seems very user friendly in a way. Like
yeah.
anyone could do, like a 12-year-old could easily make a website and
Mhm.
have a store for e-commerce today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. But yeah, like you were saying, ad reads, stuff like that. Skillshare, I haven't looked into that. Have you looked into that?
I mean, I know what it is, but I haven't done anything on it or
Right.
with it. But I mean, it's a great tool for like learning things and stuff like that. It's one of those things where I would assume that if I wanted to learn, let's say, some advanced things with like one of the Adobe programs, it's
Okay.
I assume it's more of like I'd say almost like a classroom esque way of teaching instead of like I can look up what I want to learn how to do on Photoshop on YouTube,
Right.
and get a video. But I would assume that I would assume with that you would get more out of it. You
Okay.
wouldn't find yourself in a way like I find myself when I follow a YouTube video on how to do something, pausing it every 5 seconds, having to go back every 5 seconds, and most recently when I was trying to learn how to do some stuff with Premiere, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was something I did or what, it had to have been something that I did, but I could not get it to do what the video was doing. Like I could not get the end
Interesting.
result, and I don't know what I was doing. I went through it a couple times, and I'm like, I'm literally doing this exact same thing. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. So would assume that that's also something that's a little bit less around if you use like a service like that. But it's also just a cool way because I mean, like some of those things are just like you can learn whatever about like topics or stuff like that, or anything. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So,
totally.
hmm
I use YouTube for anything though. Really,
yeah,
I will learn everything I learned about microgreens was from YouTube. Or
hmm
I had a roommate that was horticulturalist, but he was so off-putting about me learning about it that I had looked everything up anyway. You know what I mean? Like he didn't want me to do it. He
hmm
wanted to like experience it through me, but also didn't want me to like ask him questions because he was just how he was. So I just looked everything up. I bought everything that I needed and that I wanted and basically just did it myself. And I
yeah,
learned all through YouTube because there's
yeah,
hundreds of channels, thousands of channels for almost everything that you want to do.
yeah. Oh, that's why when it comes to like in today's world, when people, I think, you talk about, everyone always says, find what you like love to do, and then you can and then just do it.
Right.
Like with the way the internet works, you can literally do anything you want or anything that you love, and find a way to make money from it. Like the video I was watching, video I watched today, they were talking about this one guy really likes rock climbing or whatever. I don't remember the name, but
Mm-hmm.
he liked it so much, that eventually now, there's videos, obviously him about it, but he's done it so much that he's able just to rock climb and make a whole bunch of money from it, or make a living from it,
Right. Totally.
from everything that comes along with it. So, if you love something enough and you get good enough at it, in today's world, there's no reason why you can't make a living from it
Right.
and stuff
I
like
totally
that. So,
agree. And when I started doing just like cooking demonstrations, and I did like, I wanted to start very basic, like how to make chicken stock, how to make beef stock, how to make demi
mhm.
glace, how to break down a whole chicken, like very basic stuff that you get basically learned right away in culinary school, but a normal person would not know how to do that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
hmm
And when I wanted to do YouTube, I was like, okay, let's plan it out. I had like 20 video ideas, and I started at the top. And then the reason why I perpetually it ended up stopping was because I was moving and it started to be a lot. You know what I mean? And same with Instagram. When I wanted to tackle Instagram and try to gain some sort of following on there, I just ended up stopping because my determination eventually just diminished, and I stopped posting every day.
yeah,
And it's just like one of those things. It's like a trend. Like you have like
yeah,
there's trends in the world, and then you have trends that you do on a
yeah,
daily basis, and eventually they stop, and it's
yeah.
sad. But there's only so much time in the day, like you always talk about, that you want
hmm
to dedicate your time to. You know what
yeah.
I mean?
It's like a lot of work, right? So
Totally.
when you start to do things like that, 'cause obviously you think you want to do it, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
awesome, and you do it for a while. You have all this stuff, and then eventually from how I would describe it, is you realize that okay, maybe I don't want to do this, or
Right.
and
You get
that's why
that
you kind of
initial
stop. Ultimately, I
high.
feel like that's why you ultimately stop doing it, just because you ultimately just kind of like don't want to do it. Like I
Right.
think about streaming all the time with that. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
I play video games all the time, or in a sense, all the time. Why don't I just stream all the time? But then
Exactly.
I always remember that when I play video games or stuff, most of the time I'm doing like three other things at once, just because
Right.
that's the way I am with it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
use it as a way to just, I don't know, do other things. So
Right.
streaming is like when you're doing it, it's like you have to be kind of there to kind of watch your chat and stuff like that, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to have a personality. You can't just go off in your own little world when you're not doing what you're doing,
I totally agree, and I
which
find
is
that
what I
hard
always find myself
sometimes.
doing.
Yeah,
So
I same here, man.
yeah,
And I think it's hard for me because I started playing WoW 2 months ago, and I literally cannot stop.
hmm
I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it was what it was 15 years ago that got people hooked immediately. And it's it's a grind. But
Yeah.
when I'm streaming it, it's very hard to like not focus on what I'm doing. But when I played Overwatch, and I would average twice as many viewers as I do playing WoW, I was doing, like you said, like three things at once. But I was like
Uh-huh.
chat, game, looking stuff on YouTube. Regardless. But it's just I feel like when you stream, you gotta have a game that's engaging.
Yeah.
At least have an audience that's engaged at the game. You know what I
Hey,
mean?
wait, hey, you did that with Overwatch, man. You were a big Overwatch streamer.
I know it was the weirdest thing,
Hmm.
and it was weird because I didn't start. It actually was huge because I played League and I didn't stream when I was playing League like serious on ranked until I hit silver one. And I was like, my buddy's streaming. I could try to figure it out. And then I was like, what's like one of the top games right now on Twitch? What was it? Fortnite, yeah, TFT, League of Legends, Overwatch, CS:GO. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, and they tell you when you start streaming, just to stream like a big game.
Uh-huh.
Be that 3-4 person viewer on a big game because then there's more eyes regardless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and then like I would get on the recommended channel like low. There's this part on Twitch where you see like recommended channels and they're all like low numbers.
Hmm.
So I had a sub that gifted so many subs just because she found me on recommended, and then like it just like it's a very weird trend.
Yeah.
And then my Discord started to blow up just because I was trying to get everyone in there that was I was playing with, because then it kind of like boosted people coming into the stream every time
Hmm.
I went live because people would get notification. And regardless, I plan on doing more of that, but just I got the WoW bug, man, and it's
Yeah.
it's very hard to not play it.
Well, funny that obviously you mentioned Overwatch. So cool thing about Overwatch, I don't know if you heard the hot rumor going around,
Yes.
but Overwatch 2 is supposedly going to be announced at BlizzCon this
Mm-hmm.
weekend.
I'm excited.
So,
I'm excited. Quite
definitely
excited.
definitely a good time to be an Overwatch streamer
Yeah, and
if that's what comes out.
it's just, and it's every other FPS game that I've played. It's just like you, especially for Black Ops 4. That game, for me, just I played it for 2 months, and it just tanked. Like it didn't. It wasn't fun to me. It was
Hmm.
very repetitive.
Yeah.
And at least Overwatch, you could play different roles and
Yeah,
heroes, and
characters.
yeah, and I mean you could do whatever, really.
Hmm.
I didn't mean to turn this into like a video game podcast, but I just we both share the same interest on esports, video games, news, trends. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like it's I think that's cool. Like when you think when I think about a lot of multiplayer games, at least the ones that you always find yourself coming back to now, at least for me, it's ones where you have like that multiple kind of ways you can play it. Like that's what keeps League so interesting or whatever.
right. Oh
Because
yeah,
I never really like when it comes to like FPS games, there's never really been an FPS game that I've forever like kind of stayed with. Obviously, Call of Duty, the new game comes out every year, so you can't really keep coming back to it in a sense because it's a different game.
right.
Because like I was a huge Call of Duty guy. All I played like of every video game besides RuneScape, probably Modern Warfare 3 is the game with the most hours and enjoyment that I've put into a game.
Right.
And like that was an FPS multiplayer game. But there's just never, I don't know if it's because I don't have as many friends that enjoy competitive shooter type games anymore to play
Hmm.
with, or maybe I'm just like not as good, or I don't know, maybe it's the games. I'm not 100% sure, but since that game there hasn't really been that kind of enjoyment from FPS games or like consistent. Like you just play that game. I played that game every day regardless.
Right.
But now it seems like when you play like games like you say, all right guys, let's play some Siege. You get maybe 4 games, couple hours, once a week,
Yeah.
maybe, and then it's like, all right, that's enough Siege for the day. If you've had your fix or whatever. Like I guess maybe Battlefield 1 was a very like that was probably the first time in a while where whenever like one of us suggested playing it,
Hmm.
run with the squad, it was fun. No one was like ever angry enough to where it was like that's why we want
Right.
to stop playing.
Hmm.
So I guess that's kind of cool. So I'm hoping Battlefield 5 will get good enough to where it can be that level because I love that. I love that World War II setting, and
Hmm.
they're adding the Pacific Theater tomorrow with the update. So
Interesting.
looking forward to that
I
one.
heard that Call of Duty, the new one, they did ground war kind of like Battlefield. Is that true?
Yeah,
Or
Yeah, for the computer, I guess I haven't played it, but they have like a 64 person ground war. You know, I think there's like 5 or 6 flags on the 2 maps,
Whoa,
and there's vehicles and stuff. So it's literally like the scale of Battlefield in like a COD setting, but
interesting.
not quite. Like Battlefield's so unique in terms of like in terms of conquest and
Mm-hmm.
just like the gameplay and the experience that it creates when you play it. You know, it's hard to match, but
Right.
yeah, just playing Call of Duty and being in them going for that style is really cool, you know, and I think a lot of people are enjoying it.
Awesome.
I mean, for the
I
most
probably
part,
won't buy it, unfortunately.
like I said, Call of Duty is one of those games. You know, I just said, how it comes out every year, so unless you know you're gonna put like a lot of hours into it,
Yeah.
it's probably not worth your money because next year there's gonna be a new one. You know what I mean?
Regardless, yeah. There's
Games like
always.
what like Battlefield, I think is on like a 2 to 3 year in between games, so
Mm-hmm.
it's more you have 3 years to put in those hours
Mm-hmm.
if you spend the money. Uh, like Siege came out, I don't know how many years ago, like 2 years, like two, I think over 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and so and there you haven't even heard anything about a new one for that yet. They're just continually adding to that one still.
Yeah.
So it's like you spend what $60 then to get it, and you've had 4 years to get your time in for it.
DLC.
Yeah, you don't have then it's like more worth getting it. You know, you don't think about it as much
Totally
because of
agree.
that longevity.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. It's just a different way of looking at it when it comes to buying games. Did you actually see? This is kind of an interesting hot take. That EA is putting games back on Steam. Have you booted up Steam at all?
Not today, and I didn't get it on yesterday. I was doing stuff. What do you mean by that? Can
I
you
think
elaborate?
I think that the update like just went live yesterday. So unless you
Oh,
were just on there, but yeah, they're just how EA you have to have Origin to buy their games.
I hate it. Yes.
Well, now I didn't read the whole article, but now it looks like all of the games will also be on Steam
Really
again. Yeah,
interesting.
like it
There's
was
5 games
however
that I
many
have
years
on
ago.
Origin. Yeah, and then you have Ubisoft.
Hmm. But
Um,
Ubisoft games you can still buy through Steam. They haven't made that
yeah, it's
switch.
it depends on where you sourced your game codes from. When I bought Siege, I bought it from G2A, and I bought the only Ubisoft code that was like out at that time,
Uh-huh.
which is weird. And I got like a 5% discount. Like it really wasn't anything big, but I know you can open your Steam settings and kind of add games from your HDD, your hard drive, and play them through Steam if they're also a Steam game.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you can activate a game that's on your
Yeah.
whatever. Regardless, but yeah, that is really cool. I'll have to check that out after
It's
this.
just it's just because I know one of the biggest things a lot of people have no one likes Origin. I don't even like Origin. It's still
No.
such a clunky interface.
Yep.
The
Shift
issues you
F2.
Yeah, it's just a
What?
clunky thing, and it
Yeah.
sucks that you have to play. Yeah, when you want to buy an e game, you have to buy it through that.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be really good. I think they're kind of teaming up in a way. I feel with Steam to combine their resources. Because obviously people are going to start buying games through Steam if it's an EA game again,
Right.
because Steam's still bigger. They're
Mm-hmm.
not forced to go through Origin, so they won't. So it's definitely, I think, a move with EA and Steam to kind of team up and take on Epic Game Store and
Yeah, what do you think about that? Like Epic Game exclusives. Obviously, Fortnite is one of the biggest games in today's society. What do you think about that? Where it was like exclusively, and I purchased a game. I pre-purchased a game actually that was on Epic exclusively. That was like an alpha game where you can like play. I thought it was gonna be like kind of like Minecraft, how you play the alpha stages and then it gets updated like every 2 weeks to the
yeah.
point of finishing. And I haven't picked up that game yet. Like I haven't picked it up again after I played it originally, so there's probably a bunch of changes. How do you feel about that? Where they pretty much bought the rights, or they contracted the rights for like 2 to 3 years. I think
Yeah.
Fortnite will forever live on that. But regardless, how do you feel about that?
No, I don't like the whole exclusivity thing because it doesn't. It was funny that when Borderlands was going exclusive on Epic, I think the Borderlands people were trying to say that they're doing it to help like the ecosystem
Right.
by putting it on a different platform to like help the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
but really you're not helping the consumer because now you're saying you can only buy it here. Like you're not helping the overall ecosystem by only allowing it to be on one platform. In order to
Mm-hmm.
like help the ecosystem and allow the consumer to have power of choice, it has to be accessible on all the different platforms or
Right.
all the different services, so you can download it on whatever service you like more.
I agree with that, but I also think that when you're a small indie game, this is my counterpoint to your statement. When you're a small indie game developer and you have a game that is going to be in your minds huge, I think that that money that you would get from an exclusivity deal could potentially benefit your game development, especially your team involving. Like they see
Mm-hmm.
like a, I mean, I'm just gonna throw out $2 million for exclusivity for let's say 4 to 5 years. That $2 million you wouldn't have if you would have signed that. You know what I mean? You would have basically
Yeah.
just put your trust into any game um, marketplace. I think is
Mm-hmm.
the word for that, and then you would see numbers coming in from every game marketplace. But when you have an exclusivity deal, you see $2 million straight away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you feel about that?
No, I mean that definitely makes sense, and it's a good example, like a comparison thing when you mentioned it's more money, directly in the pockets. So like, obviously, if you can make more money from like a sale or something and get more of
Mm-hmm.
it in your pocket, that's more money you can use to reinvest or whatever.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the Epic being a lot smaller than Steam,
Mm-hmm.
I know that if I were to put my game on Steam, it would reach a broader audience. I might not be able to get as much money back in a sense. Like,
Right.
the profit margins might be a little bit smaller,
Mm-hmm.
but I know there's a bigger chance of more people buying it. So like maybe that gap can shrink, because you have more people there. You might be getting more money here, but you have more
Mm-hmm.
people there, so those numbers kind of balance or
I think that's what happened with this game. This game
equal
I'm
out.
referring to is Satisfactory, and it's kind of like a Factorio 3D, kind of like open world, kind of weird game, but it was very fun. It was like you build your factory regardless. You build like it was kind of one of those niche games.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they could have did better on Steam because Epic was so little,
Yeah.
like a year and a half ago before
Just a lot
Fortnite.
of
I mean,
people didn't pick it up.
yeah, and I feel like if they would have went on Steam, or eventually if they do go on Steam once the game releases, like fully, like
Mm-hmm.
1.0, patch, I think they could see more of a increase in
Yeah,
profits, which is good.
resurgence or whatever.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I feel like Steam is just like, especially the free to play games on Steam, like CS:GO. What are the average players? You know what I mean? Warframe's a huge free to play game. I mean, just think about it,
Mm-hmm.
And free to play games just brings up another whole topic. I mean, one of our favorite games of all time is League of Legends, and
Yeah.
that's been a free to play game forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dota 2, like I don't play Dota 2, but I could imagine it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Just in retrospect to free to play. You don't
Yeah.
have to pay anything. All you have to do is download the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's one
Which is
thing I,
huge.
I definitely like about I think about when it comes to games now, of how I just wish some studios that develop like more like shooting games, kind of almost what Siege has done.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have your game, you have your idea, you create it, whether or not it's free initially, but then you use the longevity of it to just continue to add content, good quality content into it,
Right.
and then you don't worry about a re-release of a game to change like the setting of the game for like 5 to 10 years.
Right.
I really wish like a game like Battlefield, in my opinion, has the ability to do that, because you're not when you think of I guess when I think of when you need to release a new game for series that are like big,
Mm-hmm.
it's only when you're updating like an engine, you need to make enhancements to actually like the way the game performs.
Right.
Other than that, you should be able to just add quality content to it with what you've made.
Oh, I totally agree.
Like CS:GO, even it's been around forever, and they barely even add anything to it in a sense. But it's just such a good quality game that longevity is there. And that's like kind of what Siege has become. Like Call of Duty could do that, and I think Call of Duty would almost, in a sense, perform better as a franchise if you had a game. Like I definitely love the mechanics of the new one. I haven't played a lot of hours in it, but
Mm-hmm.
playing it so far, I like the mechanics. I like the time to kill. I like the overall feel of it. So if
Totally.
they were just to be able to produce new quality maps, add new weapons and stuff like that over time, I think that'd be great. And you don't need to release a new one every year. You shouldn't have to do that to have positive revenue or profits for
I totally agree.
your
And when a
games.
game gets updated, you feel more like community based. Like when you see a game go from nothing to like what it is nowadays,
Hmm.
you feel like you're part of it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you're part of
Regardless
that
if you're just a
community.
player. Right.
Hmm.
You feel like, oh, I seen this when it came out and it was, this way. And you tell your friends when they hop on, oh, it's this way now. And it's just like, it feels really like more rewarding in a sense.
Hmm.
So I wanted to ask another question before I went. And you were talking about just like how you could add to a game if it was supposed to be like graphically or, like obviously if you do an engine, you need a whole new game, right?
Yeah.
We agreed on that. Now, in the case of video games that we've played, there's one that comes to mind, which is League of Legends. I know we talked about this. Do you remember when that game looked so polygonal that like you
Hmm.
couldn't like when you watch old like LCS or whatever the league was called, esports games, and like they're obviously pro players that
Yeah.
used to play that in that way. How do you feel about it now? Like just that it's just insane to me that it looked like that before, or
Yeah.
even it's just mind blowing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. It's one of those things where it's cool to see a game like League, for example, take that progressionary step to where they literally updated like the whole graphical design of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy that things like used to look like that, back in, you know, the early days or whatever, and now it looks like
Totally.
this, and just it shows that you can update games like that if you want to. And I just thought about this when thinking about the whole new engine thing. I was wondering for a minute why like the new Call of Duty game like looked so good
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
everything, and I didn't know, but I guess they did a whole new engine, and this is the first game out of a brand new engine, so that's like why it looks so good and everything like that. So
Looks very bright.
yeah, it's like more vibrant than
Yeah.
other games sometimes. So like
Mm-hmm.
that was interesting to hear, because I mean this game of all the Call of Duty games I've ever played like looks the best by far
Right.
in terms of everything. So, you know, I just wish games you could get more longevity out of some games, especially like multiplayer based games. I
Mm-hmm.
think I almost feel like that would help in a way with sales overall. That's
Right.
kind of like where that whole, if you think of like, I think of Siege as the example when it comes to like there's the year pass, where you get everything for the year basically with that.
Right.
You know, in a way, it's almost like you're buying a new game every
Yeah.
year, but it's not as much obviously, and then
Mm-hmm.
you get extra rewards throughout. I mean, I think that it can be a sound model when you have a good game. You know what I mean?
And I remember when I think I want to just say Modern Warfare 2 when they had all those map packs come out. Like you would get if you get the season pass plus the game, it was probably like $80 to $90. You know what I mean
Mhm.
after tax.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would get some exclusive content right away because like they want to give you some sort of reward for first month
Hmm.
season pass. And this was before all of the battle passes came out that like if you reach this level within this amount of days, you get like the level 100 reward. Season pass was like when Xbox was huge and when I played Xbox, you would get the map pack for free a month early if you're on PS4. Stuff like that. Like that was one of the best. Like that made me buy it. You know what I mean? That was one of the best game models to get people to pay more for a $60 game
Hmm.
without including it in the game originally, because obviously they want to make more money than what
Yeah.
they did off of solid just game sales. And then you would kind of feel like you're missing out on those maps that you don't have,
Hmm.
regardless. Whether it was zombies or just multiplayer maps in general, or get like a specific skin. I mean, you know how it is. Headshot boosting when you're in Call of Duty 4, trying to get
Yeah.
that red tiger or whatever it was called. It was just that's how it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
For
really
sure.
funny though. I like the tangent we went on with video games. I don't know why we both feel so strongly, but just because they've been around for so long in our lives.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you talk about. I think you mentioned the way technology has grown over time,
Oh yeah.
and people our age especially, we kind of grew up during the peak or like the peak infancy of video gaming, and during big its big boom in creation basically. So
Mm-hmm.
just following the trajectory and like saying that you remember when people talk about Call of Duty that's been around for over 10 years, and it obviously peaked back in the Modern Warfare early Black Ops days, which was now 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And for us, we remember that clearly
Oh
and
yeah.
vividly. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So and it just you resonate so much more in the terms of like the growth of the industry and stuff when you can remember like these older things that help peak things that so much more people are loving now,
Oh yeah.
I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So like, everyone was stoked for Red Dead Redemption 2. I remember when the first one came out and how much I
Yeah.
loved that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can relate and easily be on board with all like the new stuff hearing about it.
Oh yeah.
You know, I'm so happy that I finally get to play it on the computer next week. I'll actually play the whole game and stuff,
Right.
and I'm so excited for it. Because I
Very cool.
loved the first one so much, and I haven't really played the second one yet.
That could be a game that I would potentially get, but regardless, I haven't played the Red Dead Redemption series. And I want to tell you this funny story. Me and my buddy, his name's Timmy. He would have a jank memory card in the PS2. We would play Red Redemption all day. We would get all the characters in the multiplayer playing against like AIs, and then all of a sudden the PC or the PS2 would just crash, and the memory card was so jank that he had that we would lose all progression, and we didn't care. The next day we would do it all over again. You know what I mean? Like, the campaign. I loved the campaign. It was interesting how it was like mechanic. You know what I mean? Like it had that weird mechanic style for an old time Western shooter. I'm really interested on this new one. You've been stoked for a while. The second one, anyway, that's coming out on PC. I've seen some stuff on the console. Like gameplay, stuff like that. It looks kind of like GTA, but in a
Western setting.
yeah, it looks like that anyway.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's like quests. I'm assuming there's like missions, right?
Yeah, it's basically like like you said, it is the Grand Theft Auto of like a Western
Okay.
in a Western setting.
Yeah.
And obviously though it follows a different story when it comes to characters, but it's you get games, anything that you play and like just like content in general, anything that you get, you get it because you relate to its setting and
Mm-hmm.
the environment that it puts you in. Like that's like what's cool about video games is story driven things like that. You buy games like that you're interested in the setting and the environment that it immerses you in.
Right.
I love Western stuff,
Yeah.
and it's been however many years since the original Red Dead Redemption that came out on 360, and now there's this new one. It's updated into today's standards
Mm-hmm.
in terms of graphics and stuff, and it's just the immersion is just so. I'm looking forward to it so much because I love Western stuff. It's like I feel like people get that same vibe from the sci-fi things that they put, like Mass Effect and like when Halo comes out and stuff like that.
I cannot wait for that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to some Halo.
So that's the game that I'm kind of saving all my FPS game time for, because I remember playing with a bunch of dudes from Connecticut that I've never met on like in person. They were just like people that I met online, and we ran game battles, and we would go on this website, and we would I guess I can't remember how it works, but you would like I wouldn't really call it a bounty, but you would like put like your team's wanting to play a match against someone, and you get like a certain amount of points. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So regardless, like the game battles was so cool. We would do like 4v4s. We would do like objectives, Slayer, like, and we were like, I was like 12 years old. You know what I mean? Like playing like against obviously like older or maybe my age individuals for game battles rep. You know what I mean? And it was just basically like a matchmaking, but without, it was like in a custom game, and you had to follow certain rules. Like MLG-esque in a way.
Yeah.
And I remember that because it was fun. Halo was one of those games that you had to be technically and mechanically savvy to be good. Like it wasn't like you had the best gun. Obviously there was like power weapons involved. I mean, I cannot wait for that game. And I think what they're doing is releasing Reach first.
Yeah.
And we both discussed how I mean, I didn't really compared to Halo 3 and Halo 2. Reach has nothing on multiplayer. Halo Reach's campaign was good. Halo 2, Halo 3 was my childhood, man. Like I couldn't. I just you can't. Nothing touches that game to me. You know.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, like in that case, whatever game you kind of played first is the one that like stuck with you the most.
Oh yeah.
I think the first Halo game that I ever played like in depth was like Reach.
Right.
So I'm not saying. I mean, I'm excited just for the whole thing in general because to me, Halo's. I was never a huge Halo guy, so to me, Halo as a whole is just one thing. It's not. I don't break it down into the specifics.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to talk to me about like Battlefield or Call of Duty, I could break down a specific one there into what I loved so much about like that one. Like my first Call of Duty was World at War, and I love that one. That's like the peak to me. Battlefield. I loved Bad Company 2 or Battlefield 3 was like the peak, and what I loved most from that.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
I mentioned something to my brother on our way up to Cleveland when we went to Joe Rogan, because we were talking about Modern Warfare, the new one, and I was like, I feel like my game taste has matured.
Yeah.
In a way, and I don't really like I don't really like Call of Duty in a sense of, because who played the campaign? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think Call of Duty 4 was the last Call of Duty I played the campaign for, because it was so just like the characters and the dialogue, and you really you wanted to watch the cutscenes.
Mm-hmm.
Every other Call of Duty game, I didn't really get that feeling for campaign anyway. I feel like nowadays my taste for video games has just developed into this weird, like matured adult, and it kind of is weird to me because I'm all about fun. Video games are all about fun. There shouldn't be they shouldn't feel like work. They shouldn't feel like you're
frustration.
Yeah, and I mean sometimes we probably both can attest to this, that something happens in a video game and you break a keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it just sometimes you want to break something around you or whatever, and I just feel like sometimes I just rather play something more technical. Like it just depends on. In Call of Duty, to me, it was just grinding for levels, grinding for attachments for your gun, and I just feel like I'm kind of out of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it always is rewarding. Like I bet I would pick it up eventually and play it, but it just depends.
It's like a genre thing, when you talk about. For me, when you talk about video games, you like the genre, you like the style. The reason why I always keep coming back to Call of Duty is because I love the pace of the game and the fast pacedness of it. When it comes to like a shooter, when I play shooters, I like to just run. I like to run and go. And do things. That's why I don't mind Siege, but Siege is like tactical. Counter-Strike is tactical.
Right.
You can't just run in there and be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Or be like the best running gunner like you can in Call of Duty.
Right.
It's the other games are more like methodical, and that's why I always keep coming back to Call of Duty. And that's why I like the Battlefield games that relate most to Call of Duty when it comes to like the gunplay, are the ones that I've enjoyed the most. Like that's like Bad Company BF3.
Mm-hmm.
And even kind of when Battlefield 4 got better. Just you were able to play it at a faster pace and use that to an advantage.
And I feel like they got too fast though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when they had like jetpacks and
all the
running on walls and
all the different environmental mechanics,
all the sliding.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, I'm not Adderall driven 12-year-old that was like bouncing off the walls till like 9 a.m. playing nonstop, and I can't do that anymore. I like more casual. That's a good word, casual.
Mm-hmm.
I play more casually than I do
competitively.
Yeah. So it's just that's just me though.
And I definitely agree. I agree. I completely feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when there's games that come out that can draw you back into that like competitive setting, they can be like really fun. Like I'm sure Halo will be like that for a lot of us because
I can't wait to pub stop.
We love the original stuff, and that's what it was about. So there's nothing different about going into it again and just wanting to play it a lot. stuff like that. So,
And I pub stopping on, like, obviously any game you can pub stop. Get up like 5 or 6 friends, go into a public lobby, and just every game you come out with a dub, and you're like 100 kills ahead, 200 points ahead in dom. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're just stomping.
yeah.
And that, I can't wait for that for Halo. It's just, and then honestly, the ranked too. Like, when you play ranked game modes, you want to just grind and just get the top level. I think on Halo 3 it was like Brigadier was second to last. General was I think it was 50 or 60. Like, you had to get so many ranked points or whatever like that. And you would make Smurf accounts, just to play, go through the ranks again. And it's such a weird, video games made me just different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But let's kind of steer back into, let's go to this, the naming of podcasts. And I know this is going to kind of be a huge turn here, but the term podcasting was mentioned by Ben Hamserly in the Guardian newspaper article, and I did share the article here, but I wanted you to go down to I want to say the middle. And he was speaking to this guy named Christopher London, the ex New York Times and National Public Radio journalist. He said something like, "This is," he says, "something that newspapers can only dream about. They all have an institutional envy of this." And he's referring to podcasting. So he said, in a sense, that newspapers envy podcasting. If you think about it that way, how do you feel about that?
Well, I guess what I think of that is a sense, again, I think this comes to how you like to consume content, right? So I said, whether you enjoy reading and you can get things when you're reading, or whether you like the audio things and you enjoy listening and having like conversation or whatever. So newspapers, you always have to read whatever the articles are whether it's an opinion-based article or a fact-based article, some kind of like story, but you have to read it. So the podcasting, you listen to it. I can't read my newspaper article while I'm driving to work or while I'm walking the dog or while I'm exercising. But if I can listen to that periodical, I can do that while I'm doing all those things. It's just so much more convenient when it comes to the time, I think. And we mentioned that stuff before, and like I said, I think that's why podcasts have become such a big thing, is that whole way of time and being able to consume the content when you're doing almost anything.
Right. Here it says, combining the intimacy of voice, the interactivity of a weblog, and the convenience and portability of an MP3 download.
Yep.
It takes those three things and pretty much mashes them together into this easy, digestible way of interacting with your audience. If you're a podcaster, or let's just say you're like you used to be a huge blogger. You wrote constantly on your website or a blog that you worked for, and you wanted to kind of do it in a different way, and you kind of got old, and it kind of got old and stale, just like writing and typing, and instead you wanted to do it audio. Like audio, obviously you can have a visual like we do, or like people obviously have visuals, just because it makes it's even more interactive. Like, you can see their face when they discuss something, or it makes you even feel more like you feel like you're there. You know what I mean? Regardless of the situation or topic. And I can agree with that. I don't really watch as many podcasts as I do now. I listen to a lot of them. But let's say like they were, pulling from a video that's pulled up, and I wanted to go back and watch it. I will watch that part again just to see the video that they were commenting on. Yeah. And I'm not a big sports guy, but I could imagine if I was a huge into sports, and a huge company that is like, it just came up like in the last 5 years, is Barstool. They alone have probably 20 to 30 podcasts that all of their workers, they have individual ones. I mean, they have one specific to, football, baseball, any kind of sports there is. They have so many podcasts. So like, if you were into sports, I could imagine that you would solely go to them for your digestible sports commentary. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing it really big right now. They really recently just got into live streaming when they watch sports games, and just to see their reaction to
Yeah.
like someone getting out in the third inning or like at the last inning of a baseball game. I'm not really baseball friendly, so I don't really know everything. But like that is huge right now for them. They live
Yeah.
stream the game. They don't live stream the game. They live stream them watching the game. You know what I mean? Like it's huge.
Yeah.
They're on Twitch. It's crazy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But in their case, their podcasts are huge. Like they're top in all the sports sections, and it's. I mean, they have ESPN running for their money. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They're not a huge like TV. They're not on TV at all. But like the internet's destroying TV right now
Yeah.
with ratings and just views.
The
You know
amount
what
of
I mean?
people it reaches.
Of
Or can
course.
potential reach. No, yeah, that's really good. That's a really cool take, and I can agree. Yeah, I prefer. I don't watch like, news-based videos or TV or sports talk shows. But like, if there's like a podcast that I find that talks about those things, I can find that a lot more digestible than watching like a story about it or like the show on TV or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Now, I enjoy the podcast versions of things like that more.
100%.
And I think a lot of people also can agree with that and say that that's why they prefer listening to podcasts so much.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing too when you think about podcasts is also that it's free content. Where when you think about a lot of
Right.
shows and stuff that are relatable, like news shows or sports shows or talk shows and stuff like that, you have to pay to watch TV or to,
Cable. Yeah.
yeah. Whereas podcasts, you just have to have internet, and in today's world, everyone has internet or everyone wants to have internet.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a must.
I totally agree. I totally agree. There's one more thing I wanted to mention. I wanted to give this a shout out because I don't know exactly who this is. Liberated Syndication in 2004 launched their first service provider for podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
So people that's a weird thing that people like to say is 2004 is when supposedly podcasts started getting like let off in a sense, which is like way before we thought or that I thought even podcasts started.
Yeah.
But that is the first one. It was called Libsyn, which was like the call name for it. Libsyn.com, which is interesting because I thought it happened like a couple years ago. You know what I mean? But obviously, if you weren't looking into it or had any interest into it, you would have never known. You know what I mean? Another quick one is also in 2000 and I want to say 11. No, I'm sorry, 2013. Apple announces 1 billion podcast subscribers. What were you doing in 2013? Were you listening to podcasts?
Oh.
But 1 billion podcasts, or I'm sorry, 1 billion subscribers were already listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you missed out, or?
I don't. I don't think I would say I missed out. I mean, I was still consuming content in other ways that was like beneficial, but I think if I would have like known that they were a thing, then I would have been into them
Right.
at the time. But I don't think I would say I've missed out on anything.
Right. So this kind of brings me up the last point here. Brian Redban was the sole proprietor on LA podcast scene. He started a website called Death Squad. He was with Joe Rogan when they were on Justin TV, and I think that when that started, this is solely my opinion. When that started, that's when podcasts got like 4 times as big as it was.
Mm-hmm.
When it started to be in Los Angeles, that's when it started to get hits. Like everyone started to do podcasts.
Yeah.
Anyone would listen to podcasts. So regardless, Joe Rogan started on Justin TV, which was before Twitch. I'd never really watched anything on Justin TV. I did know what it was back in the day. I know I was trying to watch like Gears of War streams back in the day. And it was just really like you said Origin was clunky. Justin TV was twice as clunky. You know what I mean? It just didn't look good. It didn't feel good trying to consume content. Like it just didn't. It didn't feel right. So regardless, Justin TV, Joe Rogan was on there. They would do it in comedy stores. They would do it in the green rooms with comedians. They would have like they used a laptop with a webcam, so it wasn't like the greatest quality. But obviously, like a lot of the people would just like listen in.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can watch it if you wanted to, and they would get all the comedians that weren't on stage at the time to come over and like say something to the chat, answer a question or say hi, and they did that for a while. And I'm referring mainly to the newest Joe Rogan and Bride Redband podcast. I think it was like 1382. That's the episode number. If you want to reference it, I don't know exactly if that's the right one. But they talk a lot about like the start of podcasting for the LA scene. So I can name probably 4 individuals that started on Death Squad TV, like the website, the whatever. Ari Shaffir. Joe started on Death Squad TV with his first podcasts. I want to say Joey Diaz started on there. But regardless, these are just all comedians that wanted to do a podcast. And they used his platform to kind of launch theirs. And eventually they all kind of skated off and did their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like at that time, it started to be really, really big for everyone's, like nationwide. Like it was just huge. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that?
I think it sounds like when you talk about like there and how it started in LA, it's all about like I feel like the collaboration thing. When you get multiple different people and like different names in there, you draw more people to the scene of whatever you're doing. That's where like people that do like interview shows are like can help grow because they're cross promoting or you're getting different names in there. You know what I mean? So it's just like anything. I think a big thing when it comes to spreading entertainment is clips. If you see a clip of something and you thought it was cool or you related to it, then you're like, oh, I want to see where that came from. So then you go check out where it came from. And then there was 2 people that were in that original thing. So you check both of them out, and then you start watching other stuff and then you find someone else from there. And it's just like, it's like a cascading kind of thing. And it's just like, I feel like with the more you see things, like I said, a lot of the podcasts that I found through YouTube because I watched things on YouTube,
Right.
When it came to, like you said, podcast peaked in what was like 2013 is kind of when it got going.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, I had an iPhone then who had the podcast app, right? But
who used
I didn't. When I booted up the iPhone, I didn't jump to the podcast app.
Nah.
I jumped to YouTube, and that's where I watched stuff at. What you never thought about clicking on the podcast tab. You didn't know what it was.
Exactly.
So you didn't think about it. It wasn't something that you ever had any interaction with. But then you eventually catch a YouTube video that is a podcast or is a clip from a podcast. You're gonna look up what this thing's from, and then what do you know? A podcast. Oh, now look at these podcasts. Look at all this other stuff that's similar to this.
Exactly.
And you're right in there.
I totally agree.
It's all part of like that growing thing that you can see with how it started so small and in this one area. And the coolest thing about podcasts is simply when I think of them, it's just a way of recording conversation. That's why that live in-person thing is in my opinion, the best way to get content out of it is because that's all it is. It's just you're taking a conversation that you'd have normally and you're putting a camera in front of it and you're just able to put yourself out with the camera there.
Exactly.
Right?
And I solely give the reason why I listen to podcasts on Apple Podcasts now to you, because I would always, every podcast I listen to was on YouTube. And I would have to have my phone plugged in, always open, because you can't lock your screen without YouTube Premium for some reason and have the video continue. Even though I wasn't even watching it, you had to have your phone up
open
on the video. And ever since I had discovered Apple Podcasts or just like any podcast, like Stitcher, I mean, who knows, any of them, Spotify, it's amazing. Like it's so like just cut and dry. Like whoever you subscribe to is on your main screen. You can see if they have a new one. It lets you know if there's a new one, and it's just so much. It's like so much more convenient. You know what I mean?
Without a doubt.
But yeah, I totally agree. Collaboration was the biggest thing for them. And then eventually everyone started doing their own thing, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all huge. Like all of the people that started on Death Squad, which is still a website. Obviously, Brian Redband is known for his trolls. If you watch Joe Rogan's podcast, he kind of brings them in. He got really big on Twitter because he was like trolling PETA. He was giving like Listerine, the Listerine mouth things, the little blue tabs. Yeah. He'd give them to like cats and film it. I mean, like he was literally just a troll. You know what I mean? Yeah. But regardless, that's how he got really big, and eventually Joe kind of skirted off of him, and now Joe is the way Joe is. Like probably one of the biggest podcast names in the entire world. I mean, I don't even know like who he would compare to. I might be just a little biased because I like Joe and I like his podcast. But I don't like if you even go on Apple Podcasts, look at his ratings compared to like any of the other ones. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's crazy. And I think the trend will continue. Joe's probably never going to stop doing it. Eventually, he might just want to do something else. But he, like he says always, he loves conversation with people that he will learn something from. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then he has all this knowledge from people talking to quantum mechanics, specialists, neurophysicists, sleep experts, his friends in comedy. Like, it's endless. You know what I mean? The amount of people that he can pull through. It's crazy.
Without a doubt. Collaboration. Add knowledge.
I like it. And I'm glad that we started doing a podcast, and I'm excited for our studio because it's just going to add more depth, you know what I mean, to the conversation. Oh yeah,
there's like I said, there's so many things you can talk about, and it makes for such great conversation.
I agree.
So with that, guys, we want to thank everyone for listening and tuning in. David, where can people find us?
Anyone can listen to us or watch us on YouTube, but you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Player FM, RSS feed, Google Podcasts. Obviously, you can watch and listen on YouTube, Facebook, and SoundCloud. All of those are updated pretty much every Sunday with our newest episode. And then, obviously, our fan link is Overcaffeinated Overqualified. That pretty much settles it.
Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch everyone in the next one.
Well, yeah, man. Thank you guys for watching.
I can't help but feel I'm dreaming, I'm falling for you. I can't help but feel you're leaving me too. I can't help but feel